I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Tranquility, The Descent from Wayfarer Games. This is a prototype, all rules and components subject to change, and I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. But with that said, Tranquility, The Descent is the third version, the third iteration, third game. It's the third game in the series of the Tranquility series from James Emerson, from Wayfarer Games, although I guess Lucky Duck does a bunch of them. This is all over the place. Tranquility is an excellent board game. I'm a huge fan of it. Very accessible, very light, but also good at what it's trying to do. I don't think there's games that are too light or too heavy. I think, are you good at what you're trying to do? And I think Tranquility is excellent at what it's trying to do. But Tranquility, the Ascent, which was the second one, was good. You might like it better than Tranquility. For me, I didn't like it quite as much. Many reasons. You can watch my review on that if you want to see that. This is the third game. It's Tranquility, the Descent. You had Tranquility, then you went higher, and now we're going lower. Not necessarily rating-wise, just thematically where it is. So, what is it that you're doing in this cooperative game? You can play it solo, multiplayer, all of that. The basic idea is you are trying to lay out 5 rows. Think Welcome to if you've played that, in the sense that you're going to have these numbers over here, and you have to get these numbers in ascending order on the rows. You don't need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but you do need 1, 3, 9, 13, 14, and you have to get 8 cards into each row. Doing that 5 times, that's going to be 40 cards you need to lay out. Except for one small problem. While 5 times 8 is 40, you actually need to double that because you need to lay a base for every single card. That's 80 cards, including those bases that you need to get out, and that's a lot of work, so you have to get started. Speaking of which, how do you get started? Well, you have a hand of cards over here. Let's go ahead and play a card. You'll notice that my hand of cards is arranged in order. That's important, not just for my convenience, but for the other players at the table to see. They don't know what my cards are, but they do know the color and the ascending order of them. They can infer that this card is likely on the lower end of the spectrum. It's probably lower than a 10. On the lower half, it's not. It's an 11, but it's likely lower than a 10. But I'll go ahead and play my cards, and let's start by playing. I'm going to play, I have a 21 in my hand, which I do want to take advantage of, but I can't do so yet. I have this blue card I can draw from. You could draw from any of the piles over here, so I'll go ahead and place down. I'll place this 15 down over here. Okay, that's my first move, and I'll draw a blue card. I don't care what it is. I'm just trying to get a card. I'm going to go ahead and place it over there in my hand to order it. I'm trying to get a blue base for this 21 because 21 is the highest card, so I want to put it at the very end of the row. My teammate over here, they're going to take a look at their hand. They actually have the lower cards over here. They have all these. They do know that I have a higher blue card because, again, they can see the back of my hand. They know that my highest card is blue. They don't necessarily know what it is. They'll try to be helpful, and they'll put down this blue card over here for me to benefit from, which would be great, except it's actually ruining my plans. That's the problem here. It's ruining my plans, but that's neither here nor there. They don't necessarily know what I have. Then from there, I'll take my cards over here, and I'll take this 13, and I'll place it face down as a base to put it over there. Then I'll go ahead and draw a card, and then my teammate will take a card, and they have to figure out what they want to do. They have a 1 over here. They actually have a 1 and a 2. They'll put a purple all the way back over here, and then draw up. They have a 5 now. They have to be mindful. I have to keep these cards in order. They have a lot of lower cards than that over there. So I'm going to take this 21, and I'm going to play it face up over here. They now know, and I should reorder this down to the bottom end, they now know that my highest card is a 21, which unfortunately doesn't actually tell them all that much because 21 is the highest card. That's the core idea of what you're doing. They'll take one more turn, just show you. They'll place this 1 over here. They'll place it down and put it on that base in order to try to structure this row. Again, the only thing that matters is that you get from ascending order going from left to right in a row. Once a row is complete, you can then get started on the next row and work your way down. You do have to go in order from the rows, working them one at a time as you layer out those elemental bases, follow them up with the various cards on top of them in order to structure those rows. That's the core game. There's a lot more to it though, because there's solo modes, there's expansions, there's the canaries. There are these little canaries that give you information where you can point to a card and say, hey, I want to see what that card is, but you lose one of your canaries. Alternatively, you can say, hey, pay attention to what I'm doing, but again, you lose one of your canaries, but if a move is really important. There's also statues. There's going to be these statues over here where basically these cards where you can discard 3 cards from your hand or from your allies in order to place wild statues down on their color. So you do have to match color, but you might be able to get a statue in play which doesn't necessarily have to follow the normal number order. Those are very helpful for when you're in a tight spot. It's also worth noting you can overlay bases. You can play a base on top of another base in this game. You can't, once a number's in place, you're kind of locked, but you can replace the bases, which is especially helpful when things aren't working out the way you want them to. That's the core idea of the game, again, with a lot of various modules. There's going to be modules, there's going to be things that pull down, there's going to be mine chat shafts that pull your cards down into the next row. There's going to be mine carts that force you to push a pile onto an existing pile and really messes with your card economy in the game. Like, it gets very tight when you're working with those mine carts. You also have these abilities over here. So you can play with a variable number of goals. These are goals that have to be achieved. You can play with as many as you want. The game recommends 1, 2, or 3, but honestly, just do however many you feel comfortable with. But these are all goals that have to be achieved in at least one of the rows. For example, this row can't have any cards that are above a 17. Everything has to be a 17 or lower. This is the reverse, has to be a 5 or higher. This one needs 3 cards in direct ascending sequence, a 1, 2, 3, a 7, 8, 9. As long as these goals are fulfilled on at least one of your rows, then you've achieved the goals, which is why I think that usually 1 is just a gimme. One is very easy to do. 3 is already challenging, but honestly, I'd recommend between like 2 to 5 if you want a nice little challenge without going too crazy, because you could achieve multiple goals on the same row, so lots of flexibility over there. That's the core idea of how you play the base game, but there is a solo mode, and the solo mode is important to cover in this one because it's very, very different. The way the solo mode works in this game is you actually can go through the rows. You can go through from row to row without having to finish a row first. The problem is you have to make sure your colors are adjacent to one another. So specifically, for example, I can play a card down here and then follow it up with another blue next to it. I already played a purple over here, which means I can't play a purple over here. You can't do that. You'd have to play cards next to cards of their color. So I might start trying to work my way through sections of them, but based on the starting cards that I have. You only have a hand of 4 cards when you're playing solo. You will have 4 piles to draw from, and you will need that flexibility. But as you start creating these structures of where these cards go, again, this purple can't go over here, you might start leaning into different kinds of patterns. And there are ways to break patterns. There's wild bases, there's ways you can play over bases, so there's ways to break things to an extent, but structurally you are going to be building out these patterns of cards, and you could go down multiple levels as you place them. I haven't placed any numbers yet, but you could place numbers whenever you want. I could place this over here. It would be a bad idea, but you could place numbers wherever you want, however you want, in order to start getting them out, but you are working your way downwards in color blocks. And it might seem simple at first until you realize that there's only so many cards. If you have green on this end over here, well, there's only so many high green cards, so I need to kind of reserve them all. Sure, one of the rows can get a 21, but no other row can get a 21 as long as I maintain green on this side, and that's true for the purple on this side. So you start having these challenges where you start realizing, okay, well, if it's 21, 20, 19, 18, I have to start moving and merging into colors. They have to weave into each other if I want to have any chance of actually getting my colors in order. That's going to be the solo mode. Lots of nuance to it as far as how it interacts with various expansions, but it totally changes up the gameplay. You can go multiple levels at once, but you do have to maintain color adjacency, which adds a new restriction, but also freeing you up in terms of the way you approach the rows. That is how you play through Tranquility the Descent, which means it's time to tell you my opinion on the game, and it depends on whether I'm playing it solo or not. Let's start with the base game. The base game has this kind of a general idea of you looking at your opponent's cards or your teammates' cards, and then knowing where the cards are in order. It's a fun gimmick, but I will say for me, it's mostly just a gimmick, meaning the tricky part about looking at a hand of cards and seeing the order is when you're going through a row in this game, at least my experience with this so far, is when you are going through a row, at first it doesn't matter enough. For the most part, I find myself working on my cards. Like, I have a 21 in my hand, so I'm going to try to find a base for that 21. For the most part, that's what tends to happen as I approach the rows, at least across my plays of this game, where it's not really about your hand. I'll do my own little thing. Once in a while, as you get to the end of a row, as you start closing off a row, things start getting a little tighter. That's when I start paying attention to your hand. That's when I start thinking, okay, well, I can't play my card right now because we need to get something between an 8 and a 12. That's much more limiting. I don't have that. I do see you have a red card in the middle, so I'm going to try to place a red base down to try to help you out. So I do find that you start paying attention to your teammates' hands as you are down to those last 2 or 3 cards in a row, and you're trying to make it work. The tricky part is, if you haven't been paying enough attention, because as players play cards, you can be like, oh, you just played a 14 from the middle, that means everything to the left of your hand is a 13 or less. Your hand is mostly high cards. So you do have the ability to actually look at what players are doing to a very high level and really see and deduce what makes the most sense. But you have to be looking at their hand the entire time in order to do so, and you don't really need to until the end, which means I kind of have a choice of playing a little bit more laissez-faire, a little bit more loose on how much attention I'm paying. At the downside, that when we're in a tight spot, that information could have been helpful, but at least I get to play the game without over-analyzing and trying to remember every single person at the table and the cards they played. So overall, the hand viewing mechanism didn't work as well for me as I would have liked. It was charming the first time I played, and as I started to play it more, it wore on me in the way that I just kind of preferred original Tranquility. Tranquility the Descent started going the way of Tranquility the Descent, where my first plays were very strong, but then as I played it more, it started shifting downwards. There is a silver lining. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. That's the question. There's a light at the end of the tunnel in this one. Don't worry. So hold up on this. But the basic idea is the core premise of Tranquility the Descent was charming at first and less interesting as I played it. The core puzzle is fun. You are building out those rows. You do have to work your way towards them. There's a sense of accomplishment as you get them. As you play the various modules, as you add in the expansions, those add a lot more flexibility in different ways. I like almost all the expansions. I mean, especially these goals. I think the goals just give you one more thing to focus on, which is rewarding. There's rabbits and foxes. There's, again, the mine carts. The mine carts are challenging because they really burn through your piles. I don't know if I've won the game with the mine carts yet. So overall, the expansions are a solid addition to the game that give you more to do, but the problem I have is the core premise doesn't feel as charming as I would like and limits the experience without making it more strategic. It's this whole like watch each other's hand mechanic that didn't do a ton for me. So overall, my rating of Tranquility the core game, Tranquility the Descent core game, would be a 3.5 out of 5. I like it, but I do prefer the original Tranquility the most from these. But then I played it solo, which I don't always do for reviews, but in this case, Tranquility is a game that I happen to play a lot solo. So I solo was the last way that I approached this game. It's the very final thing I've done before doing this review, and I almost didn't because I was like, how different could it be? Tranquility for me doesn't change up significantly solo or not solo. Tranquility the Ascent didn't change for me significantly solo or not solo. There's differences, but the experience I felt was similar. But I chose to dive into the solo because I looked at the rules. I just chose to look at the rules. I was like, oh, that's a different puzzle. Let me just make sure I play it solo before reviewing it. Which, again, I don't always do. It depends on the game type, but I happen to enjoy Tranquility a lot solo. Half my plays of Tranquility have been a solo experience, so I was like, you know what? This time we're going to do it. And I'm really glad I did, because I like the solo mode so much more. The solo mode has you going from level to level, as well as having you place these blocks of colors. And it's such an interesting challenge to play the game that way. It totally changes the way you approach it, both in terms of the way you have to be mindful of the color patterns and the ranges you're working in, as you have to have rows kind of ease into each other, as you have moments where you kind of cross paths, because you could have a situation where you could play, let's say we have a green over here, so you could have a situation like this where I play an element base over this because it's next to a blue, and you start chaining off into new groups over here because you've now split the colors. So you have all these different flexibilities and ways to approach the game based on the solo restriction as well as the solo freedom, the fact that you can go row to row without having completed a row. I've really enjoyed playing this solo. Solo-wise, solo is such a fun experience. I highly recommend the solo experience of Tranquility the Descent, and I'm really glad that I played it because I was prepared to write the game off, not as bad, as a good game to which I prefer Tranquility, but the solo here is a very, very different puzzle. Now, I haven't played solo with most of the expansions. I've played solo with the goals over here, but I haven't integrated with most of the other expansions because the game recommends not to do so yet, so I haven't done that. And also, one thing I haven't done that I absolutely intend to do is I intend to try this game multiplayer, but with the solo rules. I'm curious what that does to the game as far as opening up the nature of the game experience for me. So I do plan on playing this multiplayer with the solo rules because, personally speaking, I just found the solo game to be such a more interesting puzzle than the whole, like, you know, judging which cards are in your hand based on which position they're in. Which, granted, you'd still have to do in the solo game, but I think, to me, the color matching puzzle, while going down multiple layers, was a more interesting puzzle. And if you have the extra element of looking at your hand, but that's not the core thing that makes this game different and unique, then that I think I'd find more compelling. So overall, my opinion of Tranquility the Descent core game is going to be a 3.5 out of 5. My opinion of Tranquility the Descent solo is going to be a 4.5 out of 5. And I will play it this way cooperatively as well and see what I think of it. I don't know. All I know is I'm really glad I played solo because it is an entirely different opinion based on that particular puzzle. So, a slightly different review than my usual format because I kind of had to tell a bit of a story as I was doing so because of my experience with the game. My initial experience with the game, by the way, I started off strong. I started off like, oh, okay, I like Tranquility more, but this is much better than Tranquility the Ascent. The more I played it, the more it leveled out a bit for me. And then as I dove into it solo, I've really enjoyed these solo plays I've done with it. Which again, only twice solo, once core and then once adding that first expansion. I want to dive into more solo plays, but solo has been such a stronger experience for me that I highly, highly recommend this game. For sure as a solo experience, possibly with house rules as far as the multiplayer experience. As far as other game recommendations go, definitely check out the original Tranquility, which is still a game I play consistently to this day. I love that game. I get tons of plays of it. It's just a fun solo or cooperative experience, and the modules definitely help. And then also check out the game from Pandasaurus, I think from Pandasaurus, at least I don't know who has it now. Check out the game. It's a game called The Game, which makes it impossible to search for, but it is a sequencing puzzle that is also enjoyable if you enjoy this type of experience. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.